What happens when the invisible daughter they cropped out of family photos becomes too successful to ignore? When a luxury gift gets rejected at a birthday party and the truth about 25 years of favoritism explodes in front of everyone. This is the story of how I went from family ghost to national magazine cover and why I walked away from it all. I was 12 when mom brought home her new family. Not just Jason, her boyfriend turned husband, but his two kids who came with personalities bigger than our entire house. Maya was 14, blonde, loud, and everything I wasn't. She walked into our living room like she owned it immediately, rearranging the couch cushions and declaring our TV ancient. Ethan was 10, athletic, always bouncing a basketball against something, leaving scuff marks on walls that somehow never got him in trouble. And me, I was Sophie, the quiet one, the one who got straight A's but never made a sound about it. The one who drew little sketches in the margins of my notebooks and kept my room so clean you could eat off the floor. I thought things would settle down after the wedding. I was wrong. Within 2 months, my artwork disappeared from the refrigerator. Mom said it was cluttered and we needed to make space for everyone's achievements. But Maya's cheerleading ribbons went up immediately. Ethan's soccer trophies claimed the mantelpiece I used to dust every weekend. My 13th birthday that October was the first sign of what was coming. Mom forgot to order a cake. When I reminded her the morning of, she rushed to the grocery store and came back with a sheet cake that said, "Happy birthday, Michael," with the name scratched out in blue icing. Maya laughed and said it looked like a crime scene. Even Jason winced, but it was Christmas that year when I really understood my new place in this family. Mom and Jason had gotten Maya a professional photography session. The kind where you wear 3 different outfits and they touch up your skin until you look like a magazine cover. Ethan got a new gaming setup that took up half his room. My gift was a pack of colored pencils from the dollar store and a sketchbook with a torn cover. Mom said she thought I'd grow out of the art phase soon anyway, and that I should focus on more practical hobbies. I smiled and said thank you, because that's what good daughters do. But that night, I cried into my pillow until my eyes were swollen shut. School became my refuge. I was the kid teachers loved because I never caused trouble, always turned in my work early, and helped other students without being asked. At home, I was invisible, unless someone needed something. "Sophie, can you watch Ethan while we go to Maya's dance recital?" "Sophie, can you start dinner? Maya has cheer practice and we want to watch." "Sophie, can you clean up? We're having company over and we want the house to look nice." I became the built-in babysitter, the unpaid housekeeper, the homework helper who never got her own homework noticed. My report cards went unsigned on the kitchen counter while Maya's B- in algebra got celebrated with ice cream trips. The worst part wasn't the chores or the forgotten birthdays. It was the gaslighting that came after. One evening in February, I finally broke. Maya had borrowed my favorite sweater without asking and returned it with a stain down the front. When I confronted her about it, she rolled her eyes and said I was being dramatic over a stupid shirt. I looked to Mom for backup, for acknowledgement, for anything. Instead, she sighed and said, "Sophie, you're being too sensitive. Maya didn't mean any harm. You know you have trust issues since the divorce, and now you're taking it out on your new sister." Trust issues. Taking it out on Maya, like I was the problem for expecting basic respect in my own home. That night, I sat in my room and made a decision. If they wanted me to be invisible, I'd become a ghost. But I'd be a ghost with a plan. I started keeping my sketches hidden under my mattress. I stopped asking for help with anything. I stopped expecting them to remember my birthday, my achievements, or my existence. And slowly, quietly, I began plotting my escape. Because here's what they didn't know about quiet Sophie, the invisible daughter, the too sensitive one with trust issues I was watching. I was learning, and I was getting ready to disappear on my own terms. The real question wasn't whether they'd miss me when I was gone. It was whether they'd even notice. Grandma Elaine was the only person who seemed to remember I existed. She lived 20 minutes away in a small house that smelled like lavender and fresh cookies, and every other Saturday she'd pick me up for what she called our artist dates. Mom always seemed relieved to have one less kid to worry about for the afternoon. It was during one of these visits that Grandma noticed my hidden sketches. I'd pulled out my homework and a drawing fell from between my math worksheets. A portrait of our neighbor's cat detailed down to every whisker, every patch of sunlight on its fur. Grandma picked it up with reverence like she was holding something precious. "Sophie, honey, this is extraordinary. How long have you been drawing like this?" I shrugged, embarrassed. "It's just something I do when I'm bored." "Bored?" She laughed, but it wasn't mocking. It was delighted. "Sweetheart, this isn't boredom. This is talent. Real, honest-to-God talent." She asked to see more. I hesitated, then pulled out 3 more sketches from my backpack. Her eyes lit up with each one. "We need to nurture this," she said firmly. "Have you thought about taking classes?" I almost laughed. Mom says art is a phase. She wants me to focus on practical things. Grandma's expression hardened for just a moment. "Well, what your mother doesn't know won't hurt her, will it?" That's how I started spending Saturday afternoons at the community center, taking free drawing workshops with 12 other kids who understood that art wasn't just something you did when you were bored. It was something you did when you needed to breathe. Meanwhile, at home, the favoritism was getting impossible to ignore. Maya needed a new dress for homecoming. Mom took her on a shopping spree and posted 17 photos on Facebook about their mother-daughter bonding day. Ethan wanted to try lacrosse. Jason signed him up immediately and bought him a full set of equipment that cost more than my entire wardrobe. When I mentioned that I might want to try the art club at school, Mom barely looked up from her phone. "That's nice, honey. Just make sure it doesn't interfere with your chores." But it was the Mother's Day incident that really showed me where I stood. Maya had convinced Mom to take a girls' trip to the spa for Mother's Day weekend. Just the two of them. Manicures, facials, the works. They left on Friday afternoon giggling like best friends while I stayed home to help Jason with Ethan. Help Jason with Ethan meant cooking all the meals, doing all the laundry, and making sure Ethan didn't burn the house down with his experiments in the kitchen. Jason spent most of the weekend on his laptop, occasionally looking up to ask if I could grab him a beer or order pizza. When Mom and Maya came back Sunday evening, glowing and relaxed, they showed me their matching nail art and talked about how they'd bonded over mud masks and mimosas. "You should have come with us, Sophie," Maya said with fake sweetness. "But I guess someone had to stay home and take care of things." Mom nodded absently. "Sophie's so responsible. She doesn't mind helping out." Doesn't mind, like I had a choice, like I was consulted. That night, Grandma called to wish me a happy Mother's Day. When I told her what had happened, there was a long silence on the other end of the line. "Sophie, honey, I need you to listen to me very carefully. You are not the family maid. You are not the backup parent. You are a beautiful, talented young woman who deserves to be cherished, not used." Her words hit something deep in my chest. I started crying and couldn't stop. "I know it hurts, baby, but this isn't forever. You're building something they can't see right now, but one day everyone will see it. Trust me on this." The next week, something unexpected happened. Uncle Kevin came to visit Grandma while I was there for my Saturday drawing session. He was Mom's younger brother, the one who'd moved to California years ago and only came back for holidays. He found me in Grandma's kitchen working on a charcoal portrait of her hands as she kneaded bread dough. "Jesus, Sophie, did you draw this?" I nodded, suddenly self-conscious. Kevin studied the drawing for a long time, then looked at me with something I hadn't seen in an adult's eyes for months' respect. "This is professional-level work. I'm not kidding. I work with designers in LA, and half of them wish they could capture emotion like this." He pulled out his phone and showed me the logo for his tech startup. Clean, modern, expensive-looking. "I paid $15,000 for this design. You could do better." Or $15,000 for a logo. I thought he was joking until I saw his face. "Grandma, are you seeing this Sophie sitting on a gold mine, and nobody knows it?" That afternoon changed everything. Kevin spent 2 hours looking through my portfolio, asking questions about my process, my inspiration, my goals. When I told him I didn't really have goals beyond getting through high school, he shook his head. Sophie, you're thinking too small. Way too small. Before he left that day, he slipped me his business card and a folded piece of paper. This is the website for a national teen design competition. Entry deadline is in 6 months. First prize is a full scholarship to any art school in the country. My hands shook as I read the requirements. Portfolio submission, personal statement, letters of recommendation. I can't, I whispered. Mom would never. Your mom doesn't have to know until you win, Kevin said quietly. And Sophie, you're going to win. For the first time in 2 years, I felt something that had been dormant in my chest, hope. But hope is a dangerous thing when you're invisible. Because once you start believing you might matter, it becomes impossible to pretend you don't. Hope, it turns out, is both a blessing and a curse when you're 16 and invisible. The next 6 months became a double life I never expected to live. During the day, I was still Sophie, the ghost. Sophie, the babysitter. Sophie, who cleaned up everyone else's messes without complaint. But at night, after everyone went to bed, I became someone else entirely. I started a journal that I kept hidden inside an old textbook cover. Not the kind where you write about boys and drama, but the kind where you document every slight, every forgotten birthday, every time someone treated you like furniture instead of family. Evidence, I called it. Proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't too sensitive, wasn't imagining the way they made me disappear. But more importantly, I started planning. Kevin had been right about the competition. The more I researched it, the more real it became. The scholarship wasn't just money, it was freedom. 4 years at any art school in the country room, and board included. A chance to build a life where my talent mattered more than my ability to stay quiet and helpful. Working on my portfolio became an obsession. Every free moment, every lunch break, every evening after chores I drew. Portraits that captured pain you couldn't voice. Landscapes that showed beauty in forgotten places. Abstract pieces that screamed everything I'd never been allowed to say out loud. Grandma became my secret accomplice. She'd drive me to coffee shops in different neighborhoods where I could sketch strangers. She'd sit for hours while I worked on pieces, never complaining, always encouraging. When I needed expensive art supplies, she'd slip me cash and tell me it was our little investment. You're not just drawing honey, she told me one Saturday as I worked on a piece about shadows and light. You're building your wings. The hardest part was getting letters of recommendation without Mom finding out. My art teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, was easy. She'd been pushing me to enter competitions for months. But I needed 3 letters, and asking adults to keep secrets from my family felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Kevin solved that problem during his next visit. He knew people, he said. Gallery owners who owed him favors. Design professors who trusted his judgment. Within 2 weeks, I had 3 glowing letters from professionals I'd never met, but who'd seen my work and believed in my potential. Meanwhile, life at home continued its predictable pattern of neglect and favoritism. Maya got accepted to 3 colleges, and Mom threw her a party with a cake that spelled out "Future CEO" in gold frosting. When I mentioned I'd been thinking about college too, Mom laughed and said, "Honey, let's be realistic about your options." Realistic, like my dreams were inherently unrealistic, like wanting more than a life of invisible servitude was somehow delusional. That comment lit something inside me that I didn't know existed. Anger, but not the screaming kind. The quiet, determined kind that burns slow and changes everything. I submitted my portfolio on a Tuesday night in March while everyone else slept. 25 pieces that told the story of what it meant to be seen and unseen, valued and discarded, present and absent all at once. My personal statement was 3 pages about finding beauty in neglect and strength in silence. When I hit submit at 11:47 p.m., I felt something shift in my chest. Like I just lit a fuse on a bomb I couldn't defuse. The waiting was agony. The competition results wouldn't be announced for 6 weeks. 6 weeks of pretending everything was normal, while carrying this massive secret that felt like it might explode at any moment. Then, on a Thursday in April, it happened. The email arrived at 3:22 p.m. while I was in calculus class. My phone buzzed and I almost ignored it. Almost, but something made me look. Congratulations, Sophie Chen. You have been selected as this year's National Teen Design Competition winner. I read the first line 5 times before it sank in. Winner! Full scholarship! Choice of any art school in the country. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. But the email didn't just say I'd won. It said the award ceremony was being broadcast live on Good Morning America in 2 weeks and that all winners' families were invited to attend the taping in New York. My secret was about to become very, very public. That evening, Kevin called like he did every Thursday to check in with Grandma. When she handed me the phone, I could barely speak. I won, I whispered. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Then Kevin started laughing. Not mocking laughter, but pure joy. Sophie, I knew it. I knew you had it in you. When do you tell your mom? That was the question that had been eating at me all afternoon. How do you tell a family that spent 4 years treating you like hired help that you just won a national competition? They didn't know you'd entered. The ceremony is in 2 weeks, I said. It's going to be on TV. Jesus, so she's going to find out either way. Either way, Kevin was quiet for a moment. Then, Sophie, you know this changes everything, right? Once this gets out, you're not invisible anymore. You can't be. Are you ready for that? I thought about Maya's shock when she realized people were paying attention to me instead of her. About Mom having to explain to her friends why she didn't know her own daughter was talented enough to win national competitions. About Jason having to see me as something other than free household labor. I thought about the last 4 years of birthdays, forgotten achievements, ignored dreams, dismissed as phases. I'm ready, I said and meant it. But being ready and being prepared are 2 very different things. Because what I wasn't ready for was the letter that arrived 3 days later. An acceptance letter to Parsons School of Design in New York. Full ride, room and board included, starting in the fall. I held that letter in my hands and realized something that took my breath away. I wasn't just winning a competition. I was buying my freedom. Now I just had to figure out how to tell my family I was leaving, and more importantly, how to tell them I'd been planning to leave all along. I never told them about the ceremony. I never told them about the scholarship. I never told them about Parsons. Instead, I did something that 4 years of invisible training had taught me to do perfectly. I disappeared. 3 days before the Good Morning America taping, I left a note on my pillow. Not a dramatic manifesto or a list of grievances, just simple facts. I'd won a national competition, earned a full scholarship, and would be starting college in New York in the fall. Kevin's number was at the bottom if they had questions. By the time they read it, I was already on a plane to JFK with Grandma, who'd insisted on being there for what she called Sophie's coming out party. The irony wasn't lost on me. After years of being erased from family photos, I was about to be on national television. But even I wasn't prepared for what happened next. The segment aired on a Tuesday morning. 3 minutes of me talking about finding my voice through art, about the scholarship, about my plans for the future. They showed 5 of my pieces on screen, including the one that had won a charcoal drawing called Invisible, that showed a girl's reflection disappearing from a family mirror. Within an hour of the broadcast, my phone had 17 missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. By noon, it was 43. Art galleries, design firms, scholarship foundations, even a documentary filmmaker who wanted to follow my story. But the call that mattered most came at 2:15 p.m. Sophie, Mom's voice was small, confused. Someone at work saw you on TV. They said you won something, a competition. I was sitting in Grandma's hotel room staring out at Central Park holding my acceptance letter to Parsons. Yes, I said simply, but how, when did you, why didn't you tell us? The question hung in the air between us. 4 years of why didn't you tell us compressed into one moment. When would I have told you, Mom? Between doing Maya's laundry and watching Ethan and cleaning up after everyone else, when exactly was I supposed to mention that I had dreams? She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Sophie, I think there's been some misunderstanding. We've always supported your art. Remember the colored pencils we got you for Christmas? Dollar store colored pencils, while Maya got a professional photography session. The revisionist history was breathtaking. I have to go, I said. I'm starting school in 3 months. School? What school, Sophie? We need to talk about this as a family. I don't need permission anymore, Mom. I'm 18 in 2 weeks and I have a full scholarship. There's nothing to discuss. That fall, I moved into my dorm at Parsons with everything I owned in 2 suitcases and a backpack. My roommate Tessa was from Oregon, majoring in fashion design, and had the kind of confidence I'd spent 18 years wishing I possessed. So, what's your story? She asked on our first night while we ate pizza on our narrow dorm beds. I almost said, I don't have one, which had been my default response for years. But then I looked around our tiny room with its mismatched furniture and possibility crackling in the air, and I realized something. I finally did have a story. I just wasn't sure how it ended yet. College was everything I dreamed and nothing I'd expected. The work was harder, the competition fiercer, the professors more demanding than any teacher I'd ever had. But for the first time in my life, I was being challenged because someone believed in my potential, not dismissed because I was inconvenient. My first semester project was a branding package for a fictional nonprofit. I created an identity for an organization that helped invisible children find their voices through art. My professor, Dr. Martinez, called it devastatingly personal and universally relevant. That phrase stuck with me, devastatingly personal and universally relevant. Maybe that's what happens when you spend years being unseen. You learn to see everything else with unusual clarity. The breakthrough came during spring semester. Tessa had connected me with her friend Marcus, who worked at a small branding agency in Brooklyn. They needed someone to help with overflow work 10 hours a week, mostly grunt work and coffee runs. Within a month, I was designing. Nothing major at first, just social media graphics and minor logo tweaks, but Marcus noticed something my family never had. I was good at this. Really good. Sophie, you have this gift for capturing the essence of a brand in a way that feels both fresh and timeless, he told me one afternoon as we reviewed my work on a restaurant rebrand. It's like you can see what a company wants to become, not just what it is. By the end of my freshman year, I was lead designer on 3 accounts. By sophomore year, I was freelancing for agencies across the city. By junior year, I had a waiting list. The work spoke for itself, but more than that, the work spoke for me in ways I'd never been able to speak for myself. Every logo, every brand identity, every design was proof that I existed, that I mattered, that I could create something beautiful and valuable and entirely my own. And then the call that changed everything. Sophie Chen, this is Miranda Walsh from Creative Quarterly. We'd like to feature you in our upcoming 30 Under 30 issue. You've been nominated for Rising Star of the Year. I was 22, sitting in my first real apartment, surrounded by sketches for a campaign that would eventually win 3 National Design Awards. The girl who'd been cropped out of family photos was about to be on the cover of the most prestigious design magazine in the country. But the real moment of truth came 2 weeks later when the magazine hit stands and my phone rang at 7:30 a.m. Sophie, Maya's voice was different, smaller. I saw the magazine. Mom bought every copy they had at CVS. I almost laughed. Of course she had. We're proud of you, Maya continued, and for the first time in 10 years, she sounded like she meant it. I know things were weird when we were kids, but we're proud of you now. Proud of me now. Now that I was successful enough to be undeniable. now that ignoring me would be embarrassing in front of their friends. Thank you, I said, because I was learning that grace didn't require gratitude, just good boundaries. Mom wants to plan a party for your homecoming. She's been telling everyone about your magazine cover. A party for my homecoming. Like I was a war hero returning from battle instead of the daughter who'd been erased from their lives until I became too successful to crop out. I'll think about it, I said, but I already knew my answer. Some bridges once burned become foundations for something better. I was building something they couldn't touch, couldn't diminish, couldn't erase. And for the first time in my life, I was visible, not because they finally chose to see me, but because I'd built a light too bright to ignore. The invitation came on cream-colored paper with gold-embossed lettering. Mom's 50th birthday brunch at Meridian, the kind of upscale restaurant where they charge $30 for eggs, Benedict, and $40 for bottomless mimosas. Please join us for an elegant celebration. It read, as if the past 25 years of my life had been one long, elegant celebration, instead of a masterclass in emotional neglect. I stared at that invitation for 3 days before deciding to go. Not because I missed them, not because I thought things had changed, but because I was curious. Curious about who they'd become now that I was no longer their invisible daughter, but their famous artist sister. The drive from my apartment in Brooklyn to Westchester felt like traveling backward through time. Every mile took me closer to the girl I used to be, the one who cleaned up everyone else's messes and asked for nothing in return. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The woman who walked into Meridian that Sunday morning wore a simple black dress that cost more than my family had ever spent on my birthday presents combined. My hair was professional, my makeup subtle, my presence undeniable. Mom spotted me first. She was holding court at a table for 12 surrounded by relatives and family friends I hadn't seen in years. When she saw me, her face lit up with the kind of performative joy reserved for public moments. Sophie. Oh my God, everyone look who's here. My daughter, the famous designer. Famous designer, not my daughter Sophie, not our artist, but my famous daughter, like I was a trophy she'd been polishing for years instead of a person she'd systematically ignored. I hugged her because the audience expected. It accepted the congratulations from relatives who remembered me as the quiet one and took my seat at the far end of the table. Even now, even with my magazine covers and award nominations, I was still positioned at the periphery. Maya looked exactly the same, just older. Still blonde, still loud, still commanding attention effortlessly. She'd brought her new boyfriend Derek, a finance guy with perfectly styled hair and a firm handshake who kept mentioning his Tesla. Ethan had grown into his athleticism. He was coaching high school soccer, now married to his college girlfriend, expecting their first child. He seemed genuinely happy to see me, which was disorienting in its sincerity. Sophie, Mom's been showing everyone your magazine covers, he said as we waited for our food. I had no idea you were doing all this crazy successful stuff. Crazy successful stuff. Like success was something that happened to me accidentally instead of something I'd built piece by piece while they weren't looking. Thanks, I said, because what else do you say to someone who's just admitted they never paid attention to your life? The gift-giving portion of the brunch was predictably a competition I hadn't realized I was entering. Maya went first. A designer handbag from some Italian brand I'd never heard of, complete with authentication cards and a dust bag. Mom squealed appropriately and posed for photos that would undoubtedly end up on Facebook within the hour. Ethan presented a spa weekend package at some resort in the Hamptons. For all the stress of raising 3 kids, he said with a grin, which got laughs from everyone except me. Raising 3 kids, like I hadn't raised myself. Then it was my turn. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small wrapped box no bigger than a jewelry case. The table went quiet as Mom opened it with exaggerated care, clearly expecting something impressive from her famous daughter. Inside was a voucher, heavy cardstock, elegantly printed for a luxury wellness retreat in the Swiss Alps. 7 days and 6 nights of spa treatments, private yoga instruction, gourmet meals, and mountain views that belonged on postcards. The silence stretched until it became uncomfortable. Mom looked at the voucher, then at me, then back at the voucher. Sophie, this is, thank you, but this seems expensive, I supplied helpfully. Well, yes. I appreciate the thought, but this is really too much. Too much. From the daughter who'd been too little for 25 years. Actually, I said, reaching across the table and gently taking the voucher back, you're right. It is too much. The confusion on her face was almost comical. What do you mean? It's too much for someone who spent my entire childhood making me feel like I was too much trouble, too sensitive, too invisible to matter. You don't want generous gifts from me, Mom. You want the version of me that was grateful for dollar store art supplies and didn't expect to be included in family photos. The table had gone completely silent. Derek was studying his phone like it contained the secrets of the universe. Maya's mouth was slightly open. Ethan looked like he wanted to disappear. But I wasn't done. You know what the funny thing is? I brought this gift because I thought maybe finally you'd be proud of me. Not proud of having a successful daughter to brag about, but actually proud of me. The me you spent 18 years treating like hired help. Mom's face was cycling through emotions like a broken slot machine. Shock, anger, embarrassment, confusion. Sophie, that's not fair. We always supported your art. We always... Stop. The word came out harder than I intended. Just stop. You supported my art by throwing away my drawings. You supported me by forgetting my birthdays, by leaving me home to babysit while you took Maya on spa trips, by telling me to be realistic about my options. The thing about truth is that it has weight, and 25 years of truth spoken all at once can crush a table full of people who'd been living on convenient lies. I need to go, I said, standing up. Thank you for inviting me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your celebration. I was halfway to the door when Mom caught up with me, her heels clicking frantically on the marble floor. Sophie, wait. Please, I think we need to talk about this. As a family. I turned around and looked at her. Really looked at her for maybe the first time in years. She was smaller than I remembered, more fragile. The woman who'd loomed so large in my childhood looked ordinary in the afternoon light streaming through the restaurant windows. Mom, there's nothing to talk about. You made your choices for 25 years. I've made mine for the last 7. We're even. But you're my daughter. We're family. Family. The word that had been used to justify years of neglect, exploitation, and emotional abandonment. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't erase people from photos. Family doesn't forget birthdays and achievements and dreams. Family doesn't treat love like it has to be earned through service. You had a daughter, Mom. You just chose not to see her until she became successful enough to be worth claiming. I handed her my business card. Elegant black lettering on cream cardstock. If you ever want to know who I actually am instead of who you need me to be for your friends, my contact information is right there. And then I walked away, leaving behind the voucher, the birthday party, and 25 years of trying to be enough for people who'd never had room for me in their lives. The valet brought my car around, and as I drove away from Meridian, I realized something that took my breath away. I felt lighter. Not angry, not sad, just free. For the first time in my life, I'd spoken my truth to the people who'd spent years denying it. And whether they heard me or not was no longer my responsibility.